talk, you know, and play the role of the good niggas, they'll be okay. They'll be treated with respect by the police. In fact, they'll be held up as models of the ideal protesters. Hippies that march on the amphitheater or go downtown or sit in restaurants or demand their rights, they'll be risking their lives. That's right. These cops here are tough. They'd kill you with a smile. Shoot to kill daily, you know.
Next time when a man calls you up, what he's going to do about 2 or 3 more times this year. And next time it's even going to be worse because this is perpetuating itself. The people are taking back their country. You know, when we start taking back our country from the 3% that owns the country, you're going to have to decide, are you going to load this thing and use it? If you're not going to load this thing and use it, then you ought to put it down.
To do their thing. If some people storm the amphitheater, they storm the amphitheater. Some people want to swim naked in the lake, they swim naked in the lake. Other people want to smoke dope. Other people want to go and tell the cops what we're doing. That's good. The cops want to come down and beat our heads. That's it. I mean, it's all conceived as a total theater, with everyone becoming an actor.
Democrats, the Chicago Convention of 1968 was a nightmare. Leading after the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy, Democrats fell into chaos, fighting Chicago police and each other.
With George McGovern as President of the United States, we wouldn't have to have Gestapo tactics in the streets of Chicago.
Mr. Daley is not pleased with Senator Ribicoff.
How hard it is to accept the truth.
And it's partly, I mean, you've got to put a lot of the blame on TV. At the same time you're blaming it, you've got to learn how to use it. See, TV, unlike the other media, movies, reality, books, etc., TV gets into your fantasy world. That's why the images are shot, blurred, at the same time very specific, and they keep fading, and they're in short bits, and zoom in and out. That's what fantasy's about. They're not dreams, and they're not reality. So if you want to enter the fantasy world of America, which you have to, because people watch 7 hours of television a day, and that's how they get their information, you have to learn how to use it. It isn't enough just to whack it as a medium. You also have to learn how to use it.
Talk about some current history.
I'm on.
Not only activists, which is not true. The majority of us were not in the streets. They did not go to jail for what they believed in. They did not make the choice of coming to Canada. 20,000 came to Canada. 3.5 million went to Vietnam.
In 1968, in Chicago, the Democratic National Convention was taking place. Outside that convention were protests that Abbey was taking part in.
Now, Abbey and his friends were eventually arrested for trying to incite a riot and assaulting a police officer. They were later tried and known as the Chicago 7. Now skip ahead to 1970, the Kent State shootings, where the National Guard supposedly opened fire and killed 4 students that were protesting. That's not exactly how it happened. In fact, we are seeing today history repeat itself, and that's not by accident, it's not by chance, it's on purpose, because the individuals that caused the events back in these days are causing them today. And I'll prove my point. Now, before I continue, I want you to understand and realize the importance of ear biometrics.
The matching of the ear is very key. It's been used as a standard for identification in Europe for many decades. It has been studied thoroughly, and it is established that it is more thorough than a fingerprint. The only thing that is better than an ear biometric match is a DNA test or a retina scan. Now, both of those require the person's submitting or being part of the investigation. When an ear, you do not have to have their permission, since they are out in public and photographs of them are taken. Plus, if they are a public figure or they are involved in the media, it's very easy to get very good quality photographs or images of their ears. The only problem that you run into is when you're dealing with Hollywood and the effects that camera or lens distortion can have on the image, which can be drastic at sometimes on purpose due to artistic preference, or can be done to conceal exactly who the person is for malicious reasons. Now, when you take a look at these ears, you'll notice that one is done in the studio and one is outside, so the lighting is different. The one has an earring in it and the other one doesn't, so the lobe is going to be formed different. It's going to be pressed with the earring, so it'll be longer, more elongated. You can see that these ears, though, the inner working of the ear are exact. These ears match. I want you to remember this as we go into talk about this next person. This is Leslie Kagan. Leslie was born in 1947. She's an American activist, writer, and socialist organizer involved in the peace and social justice movement. She is a former national coordinator of the United for Peace and Justice and former co-chair of the Committees of Correspondence for Democracy and Socialism, and the former chair of Pacifica Radio. She was born to a Jewish couple in the Bronx in New York City. She's described as a red diaper family, which means that she's basically a communist. Her grandmother was a seamstress and founding member of the Amalgamated Clothing Workers Union. She graduated from New York University in 1968 with a degree in art history. In 1970, she began working with the Black Panther Party. She lives now currently in Brooklyn, New York, with her partner and author and organizer Melanie K. Kantrowitz, the founding director of the Jews for Radical and Economical Justice. I want you to remember that because that's key in this investigation. The ear that you saw is Kagan's ear. The other ear that is laid on top of it is somebody that she plays in our current government. Department of Homeland Security, Janet Napolitano. Now this photograph is an older photograph when she was much heavier, but you can still see it's the same person. Is Homeland Security fake? Or is she just the fake one? I don't know, but when you look at all the evidence of all the rest of the fake individuals in government, which we'll get into in a moment, I'm leaning towards the fact that Homeland Security is a fraud.
Sheriff Joe for a long time, and my view was that 287G, the agreements that were in existence, were pretty standardless. I mean, they had
such a waste of resources, people, human resources and economic resources, and yet we have a range of people who have different ideas, different kind of theoretical constructs that they see the world through, but also differences about tactics and how you mobilize people and how you reach people. That I think that's one of our strengths. That gives us a lot more to work with. And we don't always agree on everything, but that's okay as long as we can find what we do agree on. What we do agree on is what we build from, and agree to disagree on some other things.
Now, how does Kagan tie into the events that happened in the 60s with the riots and the Kent State shooting? Well, as we mentioned, her partner, Melanie is not who she says she is.
About Chicago at all? Of course not. Never worry. Only mothers worry.
Chicago seems like we are hurting ourselves into a stockade, you know. I mean, we're getting ourselves all together where they can surround us.
See, what the Democratic Party, look at their theater, right? International Amphitheater. Have you ever been down there? Have you been to Chicago? Well, it's out of sight. It's right in the stockyard, see?
Yeah.
It smells like shit and death and piss. And it's boring. You know, they'll have like Kate Smith singing the national anthem, right? They'll have all these boring pigs, you know, fat businessmen, very serious things, see? And they'll be showing this, see? And meanwhile, you know, like every 2 minutes out of every hour, there'll be us out in the streets or up in the park doing all this thing. Wow, 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 the new America, exciting. And it'll be like a football game, see? Football game's a good model.
Right.
Cops versus the Yippies or the National Guard or whoever, the paratroopers from Vietnam. I don't know who they're going to bring back to contain us. They're going to bring a lot of heavy equipment, see? And people will be watching that on TV and they'll say, we don't want to watch that boring speech stuff. We want to watch the Rose Bowl out there, you know? And they'll get mad. They'll say, why aren't they showing us that Rose Bowl? What are they showing us that boring stuff for? You know, a lot of people are going to kick in their television sets that week.
When you look at the images of that event back in those days, and you see the individual that we mentioned before, Abbie Hoffman. Abbie is actually actor Paul Michael Glacier. Paul Michael Glacier's wife is Elizabeth Glacier, who died of AIDS, but before she died she started a foundation called the Elizabeth Glacier Pediatric AIDS Foundation, which Paul is now honorary chairman of. This is a photograph of them at the 92 Democratic Conventional Party Conference, giving a speech about their organization and the importance of global health care. Now, if you notice who his wife is, she looks an awful lot like Henry Winkler. So I did a little bit of digging and found out Henry has, of course, 2 other sisters. One of them is Bee Winkler. Bee, as you see here, is now a doctor. She is the one that played Paul Michael Glacier's wife, Elizabeth. Apparently the story is that she contracted AIDS from a blood transfusion she received when she was giving birth, and therefore passed it on to her child, and then through breast milk passed it on to her other child. So they both died, so they say, and that's why they started the foundation. If we notice who is running the foundation now, the head of the foundation on staff, which I assume is collecting a paycheck from the foundation, is this person. Also on their payroll is this person. Look alike? I'd say so. Now, how does this also tie in with some of the events today and some of the events that were back in those days? Well, we know now that Paul Michael Glacier was actually the actor that played the Starsky and Hutch character. Now, I'm more familiar with that than I am of Abbie Hoffman, since he was before my time. But we can clearly see that they are the same individual. Photographed with Abbie here is Lisa Fithian, or should we call her Medina Benjamin? Or should we call her other names like Cressida Dick? You get it? They love the wordplay. These images that you're seeing will be available for download in PDF format from WellAware1.com, so you'll be able to compare for yourself and see that they match, even down to the vein in the forehead is in the same spot and match. And remember, she also plays the fake lawyer, Judy Clark, who represented Susan Smith, which we know is fake, who also represents Jared Loughner, which is fictitious, and Bradley Manning, who is also fictitious. And funny, Bradley Manning would be brought up in this, but here's Bradley Manning at the Occupy Wall Street protest. Pay attention to the ear and you'll see that the overlay matches exactly.